I'll start talking.
Where'd you learn the martial arts?
Big surprise. Huge surprise.
I'm starting to get in a bad mood, you know? Maybe it's like a mood swing, my hormones, I don't know. You know, maybe it's my need to impose my will.
Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show Kickin' It version, where tonight we're discussing Universal Soldier 1992 with a JCVD and Dolph Lundgren. I'm Rob, your host, and my guest tonight, typically on Kickin' It and a few of the other streams, is none other than the Doctor himself, the monster from the Midwest. Good evening, Doctor. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just milking the cows over here, getting ready for spooktacular Halloween.
Spectacular Halloween. That brings to mind the fact that Universal Soldier is not a Halloween movie, and yet I don't want to call it a science fiction movie. I'm just going to call it a straight up action flick because that's what it is. And this is before the wonderful movie, one of the best movies of all time, Time Cop, that came out in '94 with JCVD. But this is equal billing. It's a beautiful film. There's some great scenes in there. This, I wish there was about 10 more of these, other than the some of the sequels, which kind of hit and miss. A lot of people say mostly a miss. But Doctor, I just want to sit there and say before we get started talking that you have a tough time with this with your medical background, but I want you to very clearly enunciate in layman's terms. That means use nickel and dime words, not 25-cent words. When we start talking about the magical mystery goo that allows these guys to actually be soldiers that are universally awesome. So just remember that, because that Journal of the American Medical Association stuff, that JAMA kind of stuff, or Lancet, or wherever you get your stuff published these days, I don't want to hear all these 14 syllable words. I just want to know what the hell makes it work. Okay? Can we agree on that, sir?
Well, in my professional opinion, this science should not work. This seems like a straight ripoff of the Reanimator.
Well, now that you said that, let's not bring up the Reanimator right now. All right. Universal Soldier, from the millennial's perspective, you, sir. Had you seen this before? What did you think of it? Where does it rank? Give us your initial quick thoughts.
I've seen it a bunch of times. I even went out and bought this on VHS, brand new.
So you liked it?
I liked it. It was different. I mean, the fact you got to see, I watched Rocky with Dolph Lundgren. I've seen Jean-Claude Van back in the day in some of his movies. So then I saw this on TV, and so I'm like, dude, I'll just go and buy it. I'm like, dude, they got VHS. And this time they didn't have the DVDs yet.
Right.
The DVDs were getting ready to come out. So then, yeah. So I bought this, and then I also bought Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen at the time.
I'm sorry.
It was a 2-for-1.
Okay.
I'm
Oh,
not.
dear Lord.
So no, I like the concept of this. The guy gets a second chance. The problem is that so does the bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Well, I mean, go ahead.
And I liked how they did with where the bad guy just get I knew right away, like they brought back Dolph Lundgren, like, oh, I know how this is gonna end, stereotypically trope, but even though I knew he was gonna be the bad guy, they're gonna get their memories back and all this stuff, I still liked it because the fact, like, dude, here's two guys, it's good versus evil, and this guy gets a second chance at life, he gets to come home and see his parents and all this stuff, it's another thing. It's kind of like the immortality kind of thing, like that. Like,
Yeah, I agree with you, because to me, I looked at this as I've always said before that science fiction can be one of the best vehicles in a movie because you can have several different types of lenses to look through it. And there's almost a romantic, and by romantic, I don't mean romance, but that old notion of what's going on here because it's two people, to your point, good versus evil, that are fighting across time. I mean, that's the universal part to it to me. But there's also some cool cutting edge things in here too. So, um, I agree with you. I think it's a good film. It was something that when it came out at the time, and I saw it when it opened back in the day, a lot of people thought it was kind of interesting, but I guess a lot of people thought, well, where's all the martial arts? Where's JCVD doing this, whatever? And I'm like, I don't know. I just thought it was very good. So I'm glad there was other movies in the franchise, whether they were good or bad. But to your point, really, really a good idea. And it starts in Vietnam. And it starts off with Luke Devereaux, who's JCVD, and Andrew Scott, who's Dolph Lundgren. So it's Luke versus Andrew. So anybody that has the name of Andrew, you want to beat their ass because it's because of the name Andrew. It's that upscale preppy wearing kind of name. And Luke because JC's
Well,
Belgian, so it's got the French thing to
it,
it. So
I
I
mean,
know you like this opening scene, so why don't you talk about it?
I was just gonna say real quick, just because their name Andrew doesn't mean that they all have a necklace, full of ears, you know.
That is
But
true. That might give you some
but
street credit, especially if
but
you cut them yourself.
I like the opening scenes. I love war movies when it comes to like even Vietnam stuff. I love the Thin Red Line. I loved Platoon was another good one.
Hmm.
Um, this was kind of like I don't want to say there's like an anti-Vietnam thing feeling to it when the opening. Basically, he's a commander, and I don't know if he snapped or if he just doesn't trust anybody, or whatever it is. It seems more like he snapped because he killed his other people who basically tried to stop him. Because these were
And this is Andrew we're talking
yeah
about, which is
yeah is it
played
Andrew
by Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph
Yeah,
Lundgren?
he's the leader of the
Yes,
group. Hmm.
he's the leader group, and he snapped. And it's funny because you see how it starts off is that Jean-Claude Van Damme's Luke character Luke comes back in the village and he sees everyone's all his buddies like he doesn't know where his group is, and then he notices that here he walks in and he sees Andrew like Dolph Lundgren with he's got a necklace full of ears
Hmm.
around him. Uh, and he's like, where's their scope? He's like, well, he's like, they are. I forget what he said, but he said like, I had to silence them because they wouldn't listen.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's actually almost dark. Like you almost want to laugh at it, but then you're like, if you take this serious and think about how dark it is, it's a little creepy way to start, which isn't a bad idea. It's just something I don't think carry through most of the movie. But on the ear necklace thing, I am not a war veteran. I do not know war history like some people are that are film buffs or just war buffs themselves. But I will say that as early as the early '80s, I remember Vietnam being starting to be portrayed in movies and TV. Miami Vice is a big show that if you listen to our top 10 Tuesdays or other ones on the Extreme Movie Show, you would hear Enlatine from I Love Comics or the Doctor, myself, the Authenticator, Dalton, and a few others talk about shows. And up there with TJ Hooker, I've got Miami Vice as a great show. And there's one particular episode that's particularly dark, and it's about Vietnam because Sonny, Sonny Crockett, who's in there, the Don Johnson character, has a background on Miami Vice from there, and the whole thing is G. Gordon Liddy, a real life dark political guy figure, actually has a suitcase where he has ears. And so there's some sort of Vietnam thing here that I just don't know what it is. So it sounds like it's a cute little thing for Dolph Lundgren to be wearing to kind of make you go, at the beginning of this movie. But I think there's something to it. Obviously taking trophies, but I honestly just do not know what the ear thing is with Vietnam. And frankly, I ignored it for purposes of tonight's discussion in the sense that I just want us to talk about what we liked about the movie and what was fun about it rather than take a particularly dark thing to expand on. But yes, definitely lots
Yeah.
of ears in this movie.
And you get the opening scene also. So he gets in there. He's talks about how the air you wouldn't listen. So now he's like, now, so now they will, or something like that, basically, because he's got other ears.
Yeah.
So here's Dolph Lundgren. He's got a gun pointed at a guy and a girl, a Vietnamese guy and a Vietnamese girl. And side note, the girl's actually pretty good looking.
Well, they look like they're a young couple, like maybe 20 and married. They don't
Yeah,
look
yeah,
like they're
yeah,
the
yeah.
emancipated villager types. They
No,
look
no,
like
no,
they're,
no.
it's legit,
They're not the
thing.
old.
Yeah.
It's just your old grandma and old man. No, no. So and he's like, and he basically tells him, he's like, are you with me or are you against me? Until he basically hears, you have to shoot them, kill them. They're traitors, they're spies. Because he believes that basically he snapped, and Dolph Lundgren believes that every single person in that village is out to get them. And he was offended. He's actually, yeah, he was offended that the other guys wouldn't listen to him, so he killed them.
Yeah.
He thought that called them all traitors, and are you a traitor, Luke, or are you going to follow command by your commanding officer? And he wouldn't do it. So then, I forgot how they got in a scuffle, and first he shot the old man, and then he attacked Dolph Lundgren. The girl's able to get out, and was there fighting. She just stood there and was watching. He's like, go, go! He's yelling at her. It was just pouring rain outside. It's dark. You can't
Lots
really
of
see
rain
it
and
all.
JCVD scenes. Absolutely.
This actually helped though because it's Vietnam, so I always love when they have the rain and the jungle stuff.
Hmm.
I helped the Predator as well. Um, this so then he basically tells her to go, and she's just standing in shock. She obviously don't speak English, so she's just standing there, and they're watching the scuffle, and Dolph Lundgren gets upper hand and throws a grenade at her, and she basically dies
Yeah.
because she wouldn't move.
Yeah. She's paralyzed with fear.
So then at this point, they both shoot each other, or either knife or shoot each other, but they both end up dying. And like the next morning or next day, the army comes in and they're like, "Oh Jesus!" I'm like, "What the hell happened here?" And so then well, they find out these two were basically like there's I forgot. I'm not sure if they were completely dead or just recently dead.
They were shot
So
dead.
that's yeah. I'm saying as far as their body state, that's why they said that decomposition hadn't started in yet. They're good candidates for their program.
Yep.
But basically, what to turn create the ultimate soldier. And so yeah, that's when you get so you get into this program where they're basically going to use corpses, controlling them with specific commands programs to have them be the super soldier. To the next generation, they go in, and that's where we get into I think the very next scene is where they show them storming into that place where it's a hostage
It's
situation.
the Hoover Dam. Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
awesome. This is
yeah,
an awesome
yeah,
scene. Well,
yeah.
to piggyback on your point there about super soldiers, I'm a sucker for the super soldier thing, and I know that other characters are talked about that from comics and whatnot. But in real life, you hear
Mhm.
about how the military and their desire to get soldiers to be more effective and more combat ready have advanced a lot of things in the past, say 100, 150 years when it comes to, caffeine, stimulants, a lot of psychotropic type drugs, stuff from World War II. I mean, super soldiers as far as, you know, over in
Well,
Germany,
this is
and I'm
what
trying to watch what I say here, was a big thing, although some people think there's a
well
strong occult element to it. But with us in the United States taking scientists from Germany and other places over after World War II, you get a whole another subset of films and things that people would talk about with the war. But yeah, it's a great idea. They have to be drugged up to keep them kind of under their control because supposedly they don't have memories. They never explain how they do it. They just talk about how that's where they're at. So they make a big almost manufacturing type perspective explained to the audience without getting too technical about it or too sciency, but just enough where you go, I can kind of buy it.
you realize that in the '90s, this is the first time they had super soldier movies. There was the other one with Mario Van Peebles, I think it was, where he was
Yeah,
another
I think
soldier.
that might have been like a year later or something, but
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. But
yeah,
anyway, back to this movie. The Hoover Dam scene's pretty good. These guys, like the one guy, like towards the end, like he took as he stormed in, the terrorist shot him like multiple times, and it didn't phase him whatsoever. He's just he got shot.
yeah. You
Quite
have you have a bunch of we've got some terrorist, nondescript ones or whatever, and they're of course under a time crunch. So they have this mobile command center that they're driving around in, and the guys, like, well, that's a mile and a half till we get there, but we only have 13 minutes left before he kills the hostages. He's like, they'll be there in 3 minutes, implying that they can run faster than a more 4 minute mile, which is pretty much the human limit. And of course, they show them doing it, and they're creeping around, and there's a couple of them. So obviously, you have Luke and Andrew and one or two other guys at least with them that aren't really shown too much, but you see them as a big group, and they're big, physical, imposing guys, all of them. I mean, JC's character Luke is like the smallest of all of them. You can't really tell, but the other guys are just these massive things. And the whole Hoover Dam thing, it's it takes like 10 minutes to resolve, but it's done well. You see one guy's climbing up the dam itself. Some other guys are going in. They have really really great aim, but it's almost interesting because to your point, in the early 90s, to see what you saw on the screen if you're watching this movie, they used a lot of computer effects to sit there and say, well, yeah, we've got cameras on them. We're actually showing everything here. We're saying, okay, go team A, do this. Team B, go do this. And they have it all planned out. And it's really fun just to watch from like a tactical perspective on how they'd go about doing it. And you can argue about specifics if it's realistic or not, like with how good of a shot they are. But the point is they're using this as an opportunity to show off and show everybody how great this program really can be, how beneficial it is to have super soldiers. And the only problem with it is they're so successful when they go through. One of the soldiers is walking through, and he's dressed up as like a mechanic. The one guy's like, "Stop, who are you?" And he's got a badge on like he's a mechanic, but he doesn't say anything. And they just shoot him down, and he comes back later. But Luke sees two people in there that look like the people they were fighting over, and he doesn't really kind of respond 100%, but they're successful in everything else there too. But because of them being biological entities, they overheat and they'll shut down, so they can only perform for a few minutes at a time. So yeah, there's kind of like a glitch, and one of the guys wants to pull off Luke and everything too, but the main dude's like, no, we're too good. And he's one of those ass clowns that you always see that, he's probably one of the worst characters just as far as the way he's portrayed. And pretty close to that is the journalist Veronica, who shows up smoking, but she's supposed to be cute, and she does her own thing, girl power and all that, but she basically kind of discovers the soldiers being chilled in ice, and even though a lot of them are shot up and injured, they're not dead. So this
Well,
is kind of like
the one
launches
is
the whole next part to it.
because then they're in like freezer chests, coolers, and when
Right
you
next
open
to
up
the
one,
beer.
yeah, she opened up one of them, and it turned out to be the scientist came out, and it was actually a soldier, and he was alive. That was the one that got shot multiple times during the terrorist takedown. So they basically were going to scrap it. She quick hit, and then scientist came out, and he's like, "Yeah, this one's shot the hell out." It's like, how are we supposed to fix it? We'll just scrap them.
Yeah.
So
Well, before we continue, I'm looking at the comments here. I see that Black Lotus 30 is in. Good evening. Dolph Lundgren is also a chemical engineer. Yeah, he is. He's a super smart guy, almost completely aced the SATs and all that. That little speech, and I think the last Expendables he was in, that Sly's giving him about, yeah, you think, he was an engineer or something. All that was just absolutely true. And JCVD's daughter, who actually was trained by him, Ashley Johnson from Critical Role and Blind Spot. I don't know that I've seen those, so I was curious what she's doing it. But Jay is in here, so before we say hello officially, let's see if we cannot just summon the GIMP. Do we want to try that? Here, let's try that. You won't hear
well,
this, Doctor, but they will.
we only get one summon per stream. Don't you know about that?
Bring out the gimp.
Well, I saw that, but I didn't notice he was in. And now we get the 3-bang salute to say hello. This is my favorite part of the feed when I hit button number 6.
Diamond Cutter! Bang! When it's all said and done, there can be only one. Bang!
Yes, now it's a stream. All right. Okay, so welcome, Jay. Good to see you on as usual. Okay, Hoover Dam scene. Basically, to your point there, the Veronica and Luke end up kind of leaving together, and that's kind of puts them almost, I don't want to say it's a buddy film, but I like how they paired them up. Obviously, she's supposed to almost be like a romantic interest in a way. But you're already like, the first act of kind of out of the way, and then instead of turning to be kind of dark or real sciencey, they get kind of cutesy, which it's okay, and I think it works, but definitely much different than having an ear necklace and going crazy from the beginning. Yeah.
They go to the motel scene. That's the room and all, and like, of course, they find out that he has a tracker inside him.
Yes.
That's how they trace him, man. He's like, he gets naked. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, he hands her the knife. He's like, he's like,
Cut it
I
off.
need to. And she's like, what?
They do this camera shot rolling up from JCVD's heels all the way up his calves and his hammies and his ass and his back, and he's completely nude. And then they cut like around looking at the front of him, like between his legs, and the lady's like, "You want me to do what?" And it's kind of funny in a way because he hands her this knife, and he's like, "Cut it out." And of course, it's not his. It's not. Little JCVD, if you know what I'm saying, or whatever. But of course, they give you the gratuitous butt shot and tan shot just to show you how juicy JCVD's body is and all that too. But it was kind of cute. But yeah, to your point, they got to cut. They got to cut it out. And then the neat scene after that is where she's going to get like all the ice from the ice machine and filling up the bathtub just to kind of cool him down. And she's starting to understand what's going on here because at first she didn't. So she's like, "Man, I got to figure out what's up."
Yeah, I was wondering about that towards the end. Like, is he gonna be able to like live his life, or do he keep cooling himself down all the time? But I
Yeah.
wonder if that. But I wonder if that's because of the drug they're using.
Yeah, I think the drug allows you. It's kind of like a major stimulant, I would imagine, where it allows you to perform better. And I'm sure there's supposedly some other technical things they didn't bother getting in, but it's like
Yeah,
cocaine and all these other stimulants. They'll get your heart racing. You can perform. You can do the snap, but then there's definitely a price to pay. And the byproduct of any chemical reaction is heat. So yeah, you definitely, as an engine, thermodynamically, you run really, really hot, need to cool down because you get to a point where the rate of cooling isn't as fast as you heating up, and that's where you get into some major damage. And those of
yeah,
you that are familiar with Central Florida, where we're broadcasting live from the Pine Hills Palace, recognize that when it's 80% humidity and 95 degrees outside, you can pass out and you don't even think you're that hot. So it's definitely not a dry heat, but they're in a desert, and so
yeah,
there's really not a
yeah.
lot of stuff going on here. So I'm gonna call them a little
So
bit
yeah,
soft.
and it's funny that the whole it almost looks like their mobile unit pulls up and basically they see her little like was she driving a Jeep Cherokee or something or station wagon.
Hmm.
So then they see that in there, and like he's like he already knew they're there. He could hear them. So like he's like, well, we'll hide in this room. So like then as they going through, they're getting fighting through walls,
Yeah.
and it's funny how they're getting thrown through walls in the hotel room, and it's just funny because they're like, okay, like, and they're like, well, they know they're gonna come in and shoot up into his room where he's at, so like they hide, so like they all come through, well, there's this hot couple, these young teens are obviously there to fool around, they're just hanky panky motel room, thinking none of it, small town,
Pitbull would be proud.
and yeah,
Motel room. Yeah. Okay.
so JCVD and this girl hide underneath the pillow, the blankets with them.
And you just see the
I mean,
gun come out of the sheath going, "Do we have a car? We need it."
and so yeah, so then they take that car and they're able to make it to like the gas station. And this is their old rickety gas stations, where they still had lead to gas. I don't know if it was like was it the same gas pumps you see in Friday 13th, maybe? Not sure, but
All gas stations were easily explosive in the 80s and early 90s.
yes, he's going in there. And he's and like you get, and he's basically the old guy was funny. You can tell this scene. Do you remember? If you remember this scene where the old man running the gas station?
Yeah, it's like, "What are y'all doing in there?" "Arr, arr, arr, arr," and you're like, "Yeah, womp, womp, womp."
He thinks they're having hanky panky or they're having sex, and he's thinking, he's like, "What are you doing in here? Come back out!"
Well, see, the thing is a part of me goes, again, going back to beginning with Dolph and the whole scene in Vietnam. It's dark. It's done well. It's not goofy kind of, "Oh, I'm Dolph Lundgren. I'm being goofy. I'm going insane." The one thing about this movie that struck me after rewatching it the other day was the fact that while we love JCVD here and we have a whole separate playlist of just his movies in addition to Chuck Norris and others on Kicking It, Dolph Lundgren, I think, really does a pretty good job acting in here, and you don't get
Oh,
quite a chance to see it yet because he's
no,
going he's going ape shit and killing people, and he's like in charge of the mobile command center. And the couple
well,
scientists that disagree with him get whacked violently. It's like, "Are you with
yeah.
me? Are you loyal?"
It was it
Yeah.
was it was right it was right at the gas station scene. He had a flashback. He started having memory flashbacks because he sees certain things. With him with the girl. Because he sees Jean-Claude Van Damme with the girl, and he pictures back to the girl with the Chinese girl or Thailand girl, whatever it was, and he keeps seeing flashbacks, and then he's like, and then finally his memory just must come back because he takes over. He said he kills the like two guards, the commander at the gas station, and he's like, "This is my mobile unit now." It's like, either you're with me or you're a traitor. Traitors die or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they'll like so then you get this scene where they're Jean-Claude Van Damme, like they take a car, like an old, I think is it either a Bel Air or is it 50 Chevy?
Corvair or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an
yeah,
old one.
yeah. They're driving away, and of course they had they left like I don't know if they left a bomb or something there or something like that, and he made a bomb, but no, it was he threw a grenade. That's what he had, a bunch of grenades.
Well,
And
also
caused the
he's
gas.
growing his ear necklace too. He started from scratch, and ever since the
Yeah,
Hoover Dam, he's rebuilding what he had before. So it's like a habit of his that, hey, I'm collecting trophies too. And you see this grow every time he kills people. You don't see him actually, putting the ears on the necklace, but you see one instance of him collecting ears, but the necklace, like I say, grows. And part of you thinks, oh, this is kind of cute, this is funny, but you're like, no, it's kind of disgusting. And I almost wish they would have went kind of dark with this movie a little bit, maybe more darker comedy, but I guess they wanted to stay like PG, for the audience,
yeah.
especially with JCVD trying to be mainstream.
So
But man,
Dolph Lundgren, yeah, whenever you saw him, he looked creepy.
well, he gets better as the movie goes on because the next scene is a goofy one, which I know you also like too, and it's the diner scene. You want to talk about that?
So they have to get food. They stop for and she has to make a phone call or something like that. So she leaves him there, and he orders gets food. And and it pans away to her talking the phone, and they come back. He's sitting there with like 15 plates of food. He's been eating. He's been nonstop eating. The waitress kind of gets the idea like, wait, what? Maybe he's eating a lot of food. He's eating them out of the house, and she wants
You got money to pay for that, mister? We
yeah,
got
yeah,
us a deadbeat in here.
yeah. Like the guy thought he was. Then this here comes this big old cook. He's like, "I'm gonna kick your ass in here," and your Jean-Claude Van Damme just beats the crap out of him.
And all you hear is a bunch of whammies.
Wham! Wham!
Yep.
Wham!
So it's like the kick noises you hear in a Street Fighter. Bam, 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 and it's like, and then the guy, and then they get thrown through the window
Yep.
of the diner. Yeah,
And he's eating while he's doing all this.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah, bread and just stupid, crap off the plate. But the thing with JCVD, we talked about it when we reviewed In Hell about how he's not a bad actor.
No,
And he's trying to do the mainstream thing where now to use less martial arts and be in stuff and pick and choose. And this movie, like I said before, Time Cop even, this movie I thought did a really good job of it. It just kind of had a negative connotation when it came out, like people didn't get it or maybe they thought it was supposed to be more action packed. I don't know, but this scene alone, he does a great job of acting because he's still kind of acting robotic because even though he's human, he's still kind of mentally out of it. And he's having flashbacks too, so he's not 100%
yeah,
mentally. But just the few moves that he does in here, like the double hand punch to the guy or the kick, he's got sweet ass kicks. We know his moves look awesome on screen. But it's not like he's kicking 100 butts, a movie or something like that. It's used very sparingly, but very effectively. So he does a good job in this scene, and not just for yucks. I mean, it's a good scene.
yeah. So basically, after all this, she comes back and they're like, oh crap, and they leave again because they're being chased again. But this time, it's you said the two scientists are in there, like everyone else is killed. They're like, well, no, he's out of control. He killed all this. They're like, well, here, I'll go in there. I'll just reset it. Reset his brain.
Reset his brain.
And
Yeah, I know.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
good idea,
the drug.
actually.
And I'm thinking like, you're an idiot. It's- and this guy's like, no, but we just need, you need to come down. You're getting cold. Why don't you go take a nap? And help it. The guy slowly creeps in there, and he's like, Dolph Lundgren sees him, getting ready to do this stuff, and he basically he's like, you know what, doctor, you're not looking so well. Maybe you should take your medicine. So he puts him in the chair, and he engages the machine. The needle comes up, and it just jabs in the back of his skull and kills him. And the other guy's like, okay, 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 don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me. And like, yeah, he just grabs that guy by the face, because they're wearing the hazmat suits, grabs him and just crushes him.
Yeah,
Kills him
that's a
too.
good scene. Yeah, and the thing too is Veronica. You know, she's like, well, I got to get the story because they had fired me because I do my own thing, girl power and all that. But she's on to something, and she's got that instinct, and she gets a hold of some records. So they kind of give you a few minutes of plot around here of her actually contacting somebody who explains what's going on, just in case we don't know it. So it's an easy way to kind of break up the action scene here for another scene coming up. But again, I'm going to go off here because we're getting close to the end, actually, believe it or not, and
Yeah.
it's really well paced. I'm not gonna say it's fast paced, but it's there's no slogging through this. But there's even a great scene in here, and it's my personal favorite one. I love it out of this movie. Every time I think Universal Soldier, I think of this movie. I mean, I think of the diner scene you just talked about, where he goes, "I just want to eat," and then I think of what I'd call the I guess grocery store scene or whatever, where um, Dolph's in there with his remaining posse, and they're going into a grocery store, and you get the one big goon who got shot up, who's now been revived again, and he stands there and he just grabs this huge steak with hardly any marbling in it, just starts chewing it raw, and then Dolph goes on this big huge speech for a minute or two about insurgents and everything else, and I just think it's absolutely one of the best scenes on there because I'm thought, man, the intensity he brings it, and just what happens in the scene's not really. He has like three or four headshots, boom, and you're like, man, this guy's insane. It's just a phenomenal piece of acting. I absolutely love it.
Man, they're showing the you should be showing the clips where they had the RV going over the cliff.
Yep, because that's what's happening. There's a big chase, and they end up kind
Yeah.
of going over. That's the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, Greg Gideon, yeah. So, I hope they didn't really do that at the Grand Canyon because that's kind of
No, no, no,
glitter.
no, 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 no. I don't think so, because it's not really. I don't think advertised as such. But it's always neat when they use real life places like that. Like the Hoover Dam was cool. I guess this is
So,
supposed to be, but yeah.
because they weren't they in weren't they didn't they steal a cop car or something like that? That's what they had. Like or a sheriff was following him and he basically like killed the sheriff
Yeah, it's a bunch of
and
minor
John.
shenanigans before you get to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
final
yeah.
scene.
So they got the gun, and like they thought they killed Dolph Lundgren, so they go like they find all his parents, where his home is where he lived. They go to his parents' farm, Jean-Claude Van Damme's farm, where his family lived.
Yeah,
They meet his parents there, and then they're sitting there, and he starts remembering more stuff. And they can't believe their son's alive, and like it's been like how many years? Like 10 or 11 years, or maybe longer.
oh, well, if it was 69, it was 92, then that would be 70, 80, 90. It would be 23 years
Yeah,
because his parents are
20,
really,
20
really
years.
old,
Yeah,
but they recognize him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so
So
for this
they
last
welcome
scene,
back.
oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, I said that they welcome back, and then of course, I think everything was even fine, and then it starts storming again.
Yep. Because it has to rain in a JCVD movie. So this is going to happen, but um, the only person that's left is Andrew, is Dolph Lundgren. So he comes out there, out to the farm and he starts mocking him, and you hear him just insulting him or whatever like that, just trying to goad him into a fight. But what you don't realize is that he was smart enough, at least, to kind of understand that, hey, I'm jacked up on this super serum, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, he's got
Doctor, it
like
looked
two.
like the kind of stuff that you take out of cows and bulls, if you know what I'm saying. I don't want to use those words, but I've seen you in action, and it's pretty brutal.
The They had the really long needles, like the ones you saw in The Rock, where you basically inject it into your heart.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I'm like,
Horse needle.
ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so they end up getting into a fight, and Andrew's just beating the crap out of Luke because he's all jacked up, and he's a bigger dude anyway, and all that. Not necessarily smarter or whatever. And it's got your typical karate punches and stuff and all that. I wouldn't say it's free flowing, but it's pretty rough. It's not a bad fight, but yeah, Luke's just getting his ass
well, of
beat.
course, yeah, yeah. It's because Dolph Lundgren is using the steroid,
Hmm.
so he's much stronger. He's able to react faster and stuff. So he is able to trick him, or I guess I tricked him, or somehow Luke was able to get the other steroid, injects himself in it, so becomes a fair fight. Then that's when they start fighting outside the mud, basically on the lawn, outside the barn.
Well, we get a
There's
great
mud
grenade shot
everywhere.
again. It's just like the beginning of the movie.
So No, and this is the rain, and then you start seeing Jean-Claude Van Damme pulling out the martial arts.
Yes, and it's good.
This
It's good
this is what
stuff.
you and this is what you've been waiting for the whole entire movie. You've been waiting for this, and it's not like Chuck Norris in the other one movie where he's like, the last 2 seconds is like a kick and that's it.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
exactly.
this is like three roundhouse kicks.
Yeah, there's some sweet, sweet action in here. Some sweet kicks, and most of it's in the barn, some of it's outside. But yeah, it's good stuff. It looks fantastic. It's well done. By the time this starts
Uh,
happening, you're like, all right, I'm ready for this.
and then this brings back us to this. He basically they reenact the same scene they did back in the Vietnam War or during Vietnam, except with this new girl, the one that John Claude Van Damme's with.
Yeah,
He
Veronica,
basically
the news
tells her to
person.
run. He's like, run, run again. And she runs, and he's like, because Dolph Lundgren, he's like, you think she can outrun this grenade? It's like,
And
it's like,
he's so awesome though. Even in here, it's like, of course he's a big guy, much much bigger in real life and everything. But on screen, he's blonde hair, blue eyes. You think he'd be like the sexy superhero, but no, he's casted as a villain, and he's got that
you know what,
really powerful looking jaw and
you know what,
face, and,
you
and
know,
he's
do you
creepy.
know what, do you know what he always remind me of? When after I saw Karate Kid, I'm like, this is jacked up Johnny on roids.
Oh man, they wish. My God,
Right? No, no,
do
but
you think she can outrun this grenade?
no,
I mean, it's like, oh boy, you know it's coming.
he's like, and he kept calling him, but he's like, come on, Lieutenant or what are we calling this, or Private, get on your feet. It's an order. Get on your order. Like, get on your feet. You know, and he just kept taunting the whole entire time, and like, and you see the way where he goes grenade, and she flies for it, and then she falls over, and so then John Claude Van Damme basically thinks that she's dead, and he's pissed off this time. He's like, now we get to
Oh.
ultimate. We get to like this is like Street Fighter, round one. It's a fight.
Yeah.
So he basically like gets so pissed off, he starts doing all the roundhouse kicking him and stuff, enough to where he's like, I think he did like three or four. Then finally, where what's his name? Dolph Lundgren stumbles back and lands on the sharp blades of the farm equipment. It goes right through him. I guess.
The hay thingy.
Yeah, yeah. At first, it didn't go all the way through. So then he kicked him again, and then it went through his neck.
Well, yeah, because when he was doing the kicks or whatever like that, Andrew had dropped his steroid juice stuff, and so
Yeah.
he juiced himself up with it. And so all things being equal, it's his turn now. So he gets his sweet kicks in his action. And the thing is this is kind of disgusting at the end where he kicks him back into the harvest machine, the hay thing. So it's just like a giant wheel with a bunch of big spikes in there, and he's gored. I mean, he's impaled, and it's not like one where both your hands are on it like a sword or something.
No, no, no,
It's
no.
all across his torso. And then, of course,
This,
this
this
is
is this.
creepy. He walks up to him and looks at him like to check to see if he's dead. And he's like, "Ugh!" And he starts talking to him. And you're like, that's really, really, you knew it was kind of coming, but it still was pretty good. But then he starts the machine up and grinds him up. And of course, she didn't die. She was able to actually run. She was not paralyzed by the fear of the old Viet Cong, whatever that means. The couple from the beginning of the
Yeah,
movie. So it's like full
yeah, yeah,
circle to your point.
yeah. Well, because it's basically they're continuing their fight they had all those years ago,
Yeah.
and this finally comes to conclusion with a happy ending. Yeah, she's alive, and he goes and helps his parents, unties them and everything, and that's kind of how they leave it there. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, but he's alive, so you don't know what happens, and yeah, it's you could say it's sci-fi in that hey, with the advent of modern technology and medicine, it can allow some positive results. Some people might look at it and go, oh no, it only has horrific things with the military, but yet the whole Hoover Dam scene's fantastic because, like I say, it's tactical. They spend like 10 minutes on it. It's not a wham bam we're done sort of thing. It really is about the effectiveness of how things go with technology over time. So it's light sci-fi. It's not garbage sci-fi like I think a lot of films are. So I think you could actually explore this a little bit more in some of the sequels. They kind of almost do, but yeah, overall, I think it's just a fun film. I think it's a good film. I wouldn't call it fun as in like yay or clapping and cheering the whole time, but It's got enough light stuff, but it's got enough adult stuff in it. I definitely think it's worth a watch, especially if you're a JCD fan or a Dolph fan, or just the movie feels big. It was a summer blockbuster type movie. It came out like June, July of '92, I believe it was. It was big, and it
Yeah.
feels that when you watch it. It's just not like made for TV crap and all that. It feels big watching it, and not a lot of stupid effects, not a lot of dumb stuff. It's still a legit action movie. It feels like it belongs, like it does, in the late '80s, early '90s, like a lot of these films are. And we had talked about before with JCVD his movies where he's transitioning to be that big time star. And I think this is actually a good movie, even though it was not considered very good at the beginning. But it had legs from people talking about it, liking the idea.
Now, now this was the start of a franchise. Jean-Claude Van Damme went on to do other movies
Yes.
at the time. So the next two movies is some other guy, nobody. I forget who was it. Wasn't I can see what it was now. Curious because I remember being he was somewhat famous. Matt was it Matt Bategla? No, that can't be right.
Well, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I just know that nobody could tell you anything about the sequel. Although, hey, cool,
And
it's a
and
sequel.
yeah, and Burt Reynolds was in it too.
That's something I don't even think we talked about when we did the Rest in Peace video for Burt
Yeah,
Reynolds. Yeah,
yeah,
because
it's
Burt was in a
Matt
lot of
Matt
stuff.
Matt Buglia, Chandra West, Burt Reynolds, Gary Busey, Jeff Wincott.
Yeah, and they waited a while to do it too, so it's kind of like,
Yeah, yeah. It came out. This one came out and was it a 98? Was the second one because 92 was the first one, and then
yes, it
was it
was in the late '90s because at the time for the
so
wrestling
that
fans and sports fans that we have here on Kicking It, um, there was I still remember it was some NWO thing going on or whatever, and the good guys came in one day. I think it was Chuck Norris. I think it was Van Dam and somebody else. I think we're helping Goldberg out against the NWO Black and White or whatever, and they were
yes,
doing it to pimp out at this movie because this is when Bill Goldberg was white hot and on his 273 and 0 streak and all that going on, and he I think was in the movie too. So they did that, but then
yeah,
yeah, they waited like another 10 years before
yeah,
doing it again.
yeah. It was 1990. It was the second one, and then 1999 we got two of them. We got the third film and the fourth one. The fourth one had Goldberg in it. It's called, and Van Damme was finally back in this role of his character.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, the return. After that, wasn't until 2009 they did another one. It's called Universal Refrigeration. I don't think Van Damme was in that one. He might have been.
I remember
No,
seeing,
no, he was. That's yeah. He
yeah,
reprised his role in there,
yeah,
and so did Dolph Lundgren.
yeah. And
Uh,
it's okay, but Day of Reckoning, which came out a
Oh,
couple years later, has Scott Adkins in it,
yeah,
who's like the guy we've been talking about in some movies too, even though we review like classic guys. We've talked about Amy Johnston a bit as well as a little bit of Scott Adkins. Um, that movie's not bad. So it's this franchise, this concept has legs. I don't know if they can pull off with other people without them. They've certainly tried, but I think it's got enough legs, especially if you're not just an action fan, but if you're a karate fan, which Kicking It appeals to a lot of them. We don't just do karate movies, we do action movies, but we love karate films and martial arts films. Day of Reckoning is definitely worth a look. It was one of the first films that I consciously said, "Who is this guy Scott Adkins and what's going on?" And it's got kind of a great opening to it. But yeah, it's
you know
this
what?
movie is definitely worth a watch. I mean, that's why we're covering
You
it.
know,
We almost don't cover
you know
ones we
what?
don't like.
Do you know I kind of I was mad when I saw the sequel and John Clement was in it. It's called Universal Soldier Two, Soldier Two, Brothers in Arms that came out in '98. They had the two main characters from the first movie were being played by the people. They replaced the actors and
Yeah,
kept the same roles.
yeah,
I was like, how can you do that? It's like, and this seems these were like made for TV quality.
yeah. Yeah, and that's the problem that we start talking about on like Top 10 Tuesday. So here in a little bit, we'll be talking about the top 10 films, I believe, of like 1997. One of the rules is it has to be released in America of that year. We're not talking about video movies. So this is where it almost starts getting blurred because some of the canon of Universal Soldier wants to ignore some of the ones you're talking about versus these other ones. And frankly, one day we'll probably review the entire franchise. It's just we wanted to cover tonight Universal Soldier. So um, Doctor, I mean, as always, it's been great. Do you have any final thoughts on this movie before we wrap it up?
someone tells you to run, you run.
I hear what you're saying.
Otherwise, that will be your final thought if you don't run.
All right, so thanks everybody for listening. Thank you for the retweets and for the likes and everything else there as well. Universal Soldier, it's extreme. Doctor, tell everybody what they need to do.
What you guys need to do? Oh, well, I would just say stay extreme and keep kicking it.
Keep kicking it, and as always, toodles.
Laters.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.